What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to a Detroit Lions live stream. It has been a minute, but we are back with the live content on the channel, and it is day one of free agency. Just making sure that the microphone is turned on and we are all good to be going right now. I think that should be good. But yes, the Detroit Lions are in day one of free agency, and it's been a very busy day for the Detroit Lions. Now, we'll get to Cam Sutton in a minute. The Lions did officially sign a free agent on day one, but I want to talk about some of the other roster moves that were made today and how it is going to impact the roster moving forward. So, the Detroit Lions today re-signed Isaiah Buggs to a 2-year deal up to $6 million. I believe just over 2.1 is guaranteed on the contract. You're bringing back probably your best interior defensive lineman. It's a really good deal, right? It's a 2-year deal for a young player that helps your pass rush, that helps your run stopping ability. It is a very, very good deal for the Detroit Lions. And then they also re-signed Craig Reynolds. As it shows here, I'm not exactly sure what the details are, but I do think bringing back Craig Reynolds to be your RB3, hopefully, right? Obviously, you don't have Jamal Williams re-signed yet, and I guess if you really had to, he could be your running back too. But overall, I think Craig Reynolds, depth running back, don't know the details of the contract yet, but was very injury riddled last year, but was very good the year before that. I think that kind of tells you that they're not going to go after Justin Jackson likely, but I think it's a good re-signing there for the Detroit Lions as well. And then the Detroit Lions ended up tendering a few players as well as moved down here as the exclusive rights free agents. Anthony Pittman, Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, Benito Jones, and Scott Daly have all been tenured and will all return to the Detroit Lions this season. Now, Anthony Pittman, again, a very good special teams player, has been here since the beginning of this rebuild. A very good special teams player, very good locker room guy, just a hard worker, somebody that makes the special teams better. Brock Wright, likely your starting tight end going into next year at this point, with Shane Zylstra being more of a receiving threat on long yards and obvious passing down situations. I thought they were a very good tight end duo a year ago. Benito Jones was kind of an underrated defensive tackle that they're bringing back, somebody that isn't going to make big money, isn't going to be heard a lot by the announcers, but made plenty of plays in the pass rush last year and was really good at that. And then Scott Daly, of course, the long snapper. I've heard a couple things about Scott Daly that some people weren't the biggest fans of him, but you can do a lot worse than Scott Daly. I didn't think he was a liability necessarily. I thought that, obviously there were a few moments where it's like, oh, like you got to fix that, you got to clean that up. But overall, good long snapper. It was really, really cheap, is really young. You can upgrade. I'm sure there are guys coming out that you could upgrade over Scott Daly. But worst case scenario, you have a pretty decent player. And then, of course, the Detroit Lions went out and they made a splash. They did something very un-Lions-like in this Brad Holmes rebuild, and that is go out and sign Cameron Sutton to a 3-year, $33 million contract. $11 million a year, which is pretty expensive, right? You look at the top cornerbacks in the NFL right now, as far as from the pay range, you obviously have Jair and Denzel making 20 plus a year, but you go down into the, I'd say, what is that, 15, 16 range, maybe just outside of that. And you're talking about $11 million a season, which sounds like a lot, but really isn't all that bad. Now, that does make him the highest paid cornerback in our secondary, but not by a whole lot, just by a few more million than Jeff Okudah. And overall, I think this is a good signing. I think the Lions might have overpaid just slightly for him, but overall, a very, very good football player. Now we're going over to Pro Football Reference. You have the 5'11", 188-pound Cameron Sutton, who last year for the Pittsburgh Steelers played in 16 games, had 3 interceptions, 15 passes defended, 43 tackles, and a tackle for loss. He was all over the field for the Pittsburgh secondary, and when going to look at his advanced stats, it looks really, really good. 15 games started, 73 targets, 35 completions, 47.9 completion percentage, 388 yards, and 3 interceptions, again, along with those 15 passes defended. Now, I know that the 4 touchdowns is kind of a lot. That's, I believe, more than any Detroit Lions cornerback gave up last year. although I'm not entirely certain on that number. I know it's more than Jeff Okuda gave up, and I know it's more than Jerry Jacobs gave up. But I mean, you're talking about elite completion percentages. You're talking about elite yards given up. You're talking about up there in the interception and passes defended numbers. And yeah, you might give up a touchdown. You might give up a big play. When you're targeted 70 plus times on the year, you're going to lose a couple battles here and there. But overall, he played incredibly well statistically. He is somebody that gets his hands on the football. He actually, just from the statistics, from the numbers standpoint, reminds me a lot of a guy like Devon Witherspoon, somebody that can tackle, somebody that is just nasty, somebody that breaks the football up, somebody that has a lot of pass defended, somebody that has a low completion percentage, somebody that has a low quarterback rating when being targeted, right there, 65.3, right? Average depth of target, just 11.2 yards, which is pretty good. 270 air yards, right? He is somebody that really is an all around good cornerback for the Detroit Lions and somebody that overall should be a very good option for the Detroit Lions to pick up. And obviously, Brad Holmes is somebody that very rarely gives out big deals. He's somebody that, usually even waits until day 2 of free agency to come in and make the big splashy moves. But but they made a very, very big move today. They agreed to a 3-year, $33 million contract with Cameron Sutton, the cornerback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, there's a couple other players that I think are going to be Detroit Lions. I don't think the Lions are going to make any more big moves today. And if they are, it's probably going to relate more to re-signing players. It's going to be more related to the John Kaminsky's and the Jamal Williams and hopefully even maybe a DJ Chark signing here. But, One Pride 40 in the building after my amazing girlfriend Addison Marinelli says free agency. She's pretty excited about it. One Pride 40 says, let's go. I think he's pretty excited about the signing. But yeah, I think this is probably the only big splashy move you're going to see today from the Detroit Lions, right? Probably not going to sign too many other players. There are other guys out there that I think are going to hopefully be targets of Brad Holmes. And after this signing, I mean, there's a lot that we don't know, right? We kind of assumed that Brad Holmes wouldn't make any day one signings. We kind of assumed that he was going to continue with the really small deals, right? I think this is the biggest free agency deal he's ever given out. So I think that's something that should be taken of note, right? I think there is potentially a different philosophy to free agency this year. One Pride 40 disagrees. He thinks we go out and get a linebacker, but I think you're seeing kind of a little bit of a different philosophy, right? Not necessarily throwing money at the biggest names, not necessarily spending 17 or 18 million dollars or paying Jalen Ramsey 37 guaranteed $1 million $1 million over the next 2 seasons, but you're gonna get more risky with your money because I think the Lions are closer. All right, One Pride 40 says, I think we sign a linebacker. It wouldn't surprise me, but I think that, we're seeing a different approach, right? Whereas last year and 2 years ago, it was small signings. It was 1-year deals and prove it. It was, maybe a 2-year deal for a proven veteran. It was, league minimums. It was bringing back guys that have showed potential, but have never really gone the distance and done what people expected them to do in the NFL. But now you're signing a player that legitimately has a case for Pro Bowl last year. I mean, he allowed less yards than guys like Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, had more interceptions than a lot of really good cornerbacks in the NFL. That completion percentage is top tier in the NFL right now. And you're not paying him too much money. Again, just going back to the $11 million a year roughly, that is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That is 15th in the NFL for a player that last year probably played up to top 10 at their position. He's somebody that gets his hands on the football. That 15 passes defended, I think, is exactly what is exactly why the Detroit Lions signed him, right? He gets his hands on the football. He forces turnovers. And yeah, he'll give up a big play from time to time. He'll give up a touchdown, but he's going to fight for that ball every second of the play. I'm going to need an arrest warrant for Brad Holmes, the robbery in the Steelers blind. I mean, I don't know if it was a straight robbery, but I know there's a lot of Pittsburgh fans that are upset that he's no longer a member of their organization. I think this is a great move by the Detroit Lions. going through just checking to see if there's any big updates. As of right now, I'm not entirely sure that there is, but the Jaguars, I believe he went somewhere else. Um, but but as far as I know right now, the Lions have not signed anybody else. This is the only move that they've made so far. Again, a little bit more on the expensive side, but somebody that is going to make the Detroit Lions a better football team and a better roster overall. He is somebody that just overall, just a very, very good signing. I know I'm repeating myself, but that's because that's what it is. It's a great signing. It's a great player. And I think the Detroit Lions are going to probably go out and look for a linebacker next. Maybe look to re-sign some of your guys, right? I think that Jamal Williams and DJ Chark, as well as, of course, John Kaminsky, are really the three guys you want returning from that team, right? We go back to the free agency list, right? You can live without Nate Sudfeld. You can live without Jackson or Skipper or Nelson. I think Evan Brown is going to get quite a big market, which should be a compensation pick. You can live without Bryant. I would bring back Anzalone, but I think you can live without him, right? I believe Josh Woods might have even already been brought back, but I'm not entirely sure. Like, you can live without the rest of these players. You can replace everybody on this list, but in my opinion, you can't replace John Kaminsky. You can't, or at least not easily, replace John Kaminsky, DJ Chark, or Jamal Williams. So I would like to see the Detroit Lions go out and sign those three players. I don't know if it's going to happen today. I know that Jamal and John Kaminsky both wanted to test the market, and I'm assuming that is what DJ Chark wanted to do as well. But the Lions hopefully bring back those two guys, and then they look to the linebacking core, because now that Cam Sutton is in the building, I think our secondary looks pretty good. Now, I would still personally draft one. I think that the secondary is good, but not complete. I think that Cam Sutton is a good cornerback, but potentially you could still look to upgrade overall in like the entire position. But I think this opens up the fact that you don't need cornerback at 6, right? I think Cameron Sutton can plug in and be your cornerback 1. He has the ball skills, he has the tenacity, he has what you're looking for in a cornerback 1. Doesn't have necessarily the ideal size, but really does have a lot of great skills that you'd be looking for. And I mean, you look at this deal, right? The Lions saved $10 million cutting Brockers. I don't know what Cameron Sutton's cap hit is going to be this year, but it's probably going to be close to 10 million. So Michael Brockers essentially paid for our new cornerback 1 by being released by the Detroit Lions. And I don't believe there's any other news. I know the Bears signed a linebacker in TJ Edwards. That was a very good move for them. I'm so happy Cameron Sutton is a Lion. I've been waiting for this for weeks. We can watch a couple highlights, right? I mean, he's a dog. He's an absolute dog. He's here in the slot on this play covering, I believe, Jamar Chase. That's not Jamar Chase. That's Tyler Boyd. But, just good closing speed. I mean, good ball skills, jumps the route, which is something we don't see out of all of our cornerbacks very often. This might even be in the same game, but just, again, ball skills, comes off his route. I mean, this is man coverage. He sees the ball and tips it, almost gets another interception there off of Joe Burrow. He's just a very good playmaker. He takes advantage of opportunities. I mean, he's not afraid to hit, as you can see. I mean, going down and taking out David Njoku, who is a huge player. He's not afraid to go hit. He's not afraid to go get the football. And in my opinion, like I said, he reminds me a lot of Devon Witherspoon in that way, is that he's got good ball skills. He's got good instincts. Like, he is a shutdown corner in the NFL. He'll fight through every rep. He'll fight for every opportunity, and he's going to go get the football. I think he fits perfectly with what the Detroit Lions want in a starting cornerback. And even though it might be a little bit not out of the price range, but a little bit extra from what we were seeing. Oh, a lot of comments just loaded all of a sudden. I think it's a good pickup. Sutton is very cheap for a big contract. Kind of curious at what Dean gets. I think it's not horrible, but I think, 11 million is a lot for Brad Holmes. Like, that is, I think, the biggest contract he's ever given out. I think we get Edmonds, could be wrong, and eat crow. I think it really, really depends on what Tremaine Edmonds wants, because I think if he's looking for $20 million a year at linebacker, I think that would be a really hard pill to swallow. But if you're talking about, you know, somebody that's going to be something like TJ Edwards, or even a little bit more than that, you're talking like maybe 10, 12 a year for Tremaine Edmonds. I think that that is a very realistic deal. But I think that, I mean, we're going to obviously have to wait and see. I've never really been in on the Tremaine Edmonds deal because I think it's a little out of the Lions' price range. I think he's going to want big money, and I didn't think Brad Holmes was going to give out big money. Guys that I'd be looking at would be like Aziz Alshire is somebody that I know is a really good free agent linebacker that shouldn't be very cheap. And there's a couple other guys, but that's really my big free agent guy. My gut is telling me we go after Edmonds. I think that you're just being a wishful thinker and hoping that we go out and we get Edmonds. Let's knock down some free agents so we can figure out who we want to draft. Yeah, I think the more that this free agency unfolds, the more we're going to kind of get a view of where the Lions feel comfortable in the draft and who they want to go after. Obviously, cornerback was, I think, the biggest need. Cornerback one was the biggest need for this team. And I think you could potentially go out and get one, but it really is going to depend on where the board falls. Missed out on McGlinchey to the Bears. McGlinchey's a very good run blocker, so I would not be. I mean, he's not a very good pass blocker, but he's a very good run blocker. So, I mean, any offensive lineman to the Bears is going to be an upgrade for the Bears offensive line. So I'm not going to be too upset when they don't upgrade that offensive line. I need the pass rushers to feast on Justin Fields again, because that's how we beat the Bears. It would be great to get a linebacker in free agency, just not sure who and how. CS played better when he had him play cornerback and DB. Cameron when they had him play cornerback than DB. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a guy that has outside and inside versatility. I would put him outside, right? I know that the clips we saw, or at least the interception on Cincinnati, was a slot clip, but the other two were boundary clips where he was going toe-to-toe with A.J. Brown. He was going toe-to-toe with some of the other Bengals wide receivers on the boundary. I think he's more than capable of doing that and competing on the boundary with some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Again, I think, just that scrappiness, that fight, that tenacity is really where you're going to see him shine, right? He's going to be somebody that doesn't give up on a play. He's going to be somebody that has the ball skills to take the football away. And I think this is a very good pick for Cameron Sutton. Obviously going to have to change his number to something, but overall not bad at all. Would really like them to go after a good linebacker like David or Wagner. I would not be upset with Levante David. I think Levante David has the really good leadership qualities you're looking for, and I don't think has really lost the step like Bobby Wagner has. I think Bobby really isn't the linebacker that he used to be. Not that he's bad, but if you're going to sign him for $8 or $9 million a year, I think I'd rather go with somebody with more upside, somebody that can still develop, or even Levante David, who I think did not regress nearly as much as Bobby Wagner did this year. Edwards only went for $19 million. That's true. For 3 years, he got $19 million, which honestly, if we're being real here, and I know that we like to hate on the Bears because we don't like the Bears, they're having a really good offseason right now. And I know they had the farthest way to go. And I know that the Vikings are going backwards, and probably the Packers are going backwards with a quarterback change and not a whole lot around not a whole lot around Jordan Love at the moment. But going forward, I think the Bears are having the best offseason right now. And if it keeps going the way it is with the Vikings regressing, the Packers having an uncertain future, the Lions and Bears could be competing for the division this year. And I know that we clown on the Bears, and I know that it's really funny to be like, oh, you guys were the worst team in football. Oh, you had all these things go wrong. But Jacksonville was in this same spot last year and ended up winning a weak division, which is what I think the North is going to be. I think the Lions can take the division with, 12 or 13 wins, but I think that there's also a good chance that the winner of the NFC North walks out with 9 or 10 because it is a weak division. And the Bears, I think, are making the right improvements to go make a big jump like the Jacksonville Jaguars did this year. Bobby Okereke, I think he's a good linebacker. I would definitely sign him if I was Brad Holmes, or I'd definitely look into it. However, I have a feeling he's going to go to Frank Reich, the Panthers, or the Chicago Bears. I know both of them have connections with Bobby Okereke, somebody that just has ties to that building, has ties to that whole system that they play. And I think that he's probably a better fit there. But if he is available, absolutely a player that I would go out and get. How about Bobby Wags? Again, Bobby Wagner, I think, took a big step back last year. I know statistically, potentially not the biggest, step back or not the biggest loss, but I think that Bobby Wagner really isn't the same player that he was a few years ago. And I would personally look to go somewhere else. I would personally look to go with a younger linebacker or a cheaper linebacker or a combination of the two, because I don't think that it is the best use of our resources, I guess, is the term that I'm going to use. Because quite honestly, I don't think it would be the best use of our resources to go get Bobby Wagner. Drew Tranquil is a player that I think would fit for sure, coming over from the Chargers, I believe. Very productive player. I know I looked into him when Luke G was talking about it. Pretty good player. As you can see, adding Cortland Sutton, adding Cameron Sutton to the signed players list, which I am very excited to see that going our way. But overall, I think that linebackers should be addressed, and we can even go over. I know, like, Spot Trek has a pretty good list of free agents, and we can always go look through that, and we can hope and dream and talk about all these different players. But I think Drew Tranquil is definitely an option. We just getting going. This is a big signing for Brad Holmes. For price wise, Anthony, would you go corner? Honestly, I wasn't even a big fan of going cornerback at 6 before Cameron Sutton. I think this is a super deep cornerback class, and I think you can get Joey Porter Jr. or Keely Ringo in the late first. I think you can go get Eli Ricks or even Emmanuel Forbes in the early second to late second. It's a really, really deep corner class. Even guys like Darius Rush and DJ Turner are going to be available on day 3. And I think both of them have starting upside at cornerback. I was not a bit, I mean, I'm a big fan of Christian Gonzalez. I'm a big fan of Devon Witherspoon as players. But if we're talking, would I draft them? I probably wouldn't. Not at 6 anyway. If we trade down potentially, I was not the biggest fan of the idea of taking one at 6, just because just not really what I think is the best in terms of, again, use of our resources. The one I had before, top NFL free agents. It had all their statistics, which I really wanted to go and see. Of course, it's not going to show up now. But I mean, I think that cornerback is in play, and I wouldn't think it's like the worst option. I just wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't go cornerback at 6. I would go cornerback at 18, though. I would definitely go cornerback at 18. Okay, so we're not going to really see what I was hoping we would see. We can't really sort by market value because it's doing things. But we can go look at the market just a second. I just want to get to these comments. So go Carter at 6, Bijan at 18. I mean, the upside to that obviously is you have, for the second year in a row, the best offensive and best defensive prospects in the class, which is always enticing for sure. What about Witherspoon? Again, I like both Witherspoon and Gonzalez. I just personally wouldn't take them at number 6. I think if you're guaranteed an option of Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, or Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson, or Jalen Carter, you should take one of those 3. I think those are all top 5 players in this class, and you're going to get one of them at 6 because 3 quarterbacks are more than likely going to go off the board. And especially if you have the opportunity to draft Jalen Carter at 6, I know this is super controversial, but just based strictly off talent, if you have the opportunity to draft Jalen Carter at the 6th overall pick, how could you not run to the podium and select the best player in this class at the 6th overall pick without having to trade up, without having to give assets? It makes so much sense. I really want a bad defensive linemen. Yes, Tim, me too. Carter, yeah, I mean Carter and Carter and Hutchinson, Carter and Bijan, I think would be a good pairing. I'm not the biggest fan of running back at 18. And don't get me wrong, I love Bijan. I think Bijan would be like a 1,500-yard rusher in Detroit in his rookie season, assuming he stays healthy. And again, it all really depends on free agency. It depends on if Jamal comes back. It depends on if Swift is healthy. If it depends on if who goes where and what happens. But Bijan's not a bad option, and I talk about this in a video that hopefully will come out tomorrow. I don't think Bijan's a bad option. He's just not my top option for the 18th overall pick. Witherspoon may fall. Witherspoon definitely could fall. And I mean, if we're talking like Devon Witherspoon at 12, and you have to trade up 6 spots and give up, I don't know, whatever it would cost, like a third or whatever. Like even going back to the Jameson Williams trade last year, right? That kind of value to move up a couple spots, and you go grab, let's say Jalen Carter, or you go grab Tyree Wilson, or you go grab whoever at number 6, right? Then I think you can trade up and go, okay, Devon Witherspoon's really good. Even though I think, like I said, Cameron Sutton kind of reminds me a lot of Devon Witherspoon. So I would go Christian Gonzalez at this point because you're kind of getting both players. But another option, I think, is if you do go cornerback at 6, I would trade up for Lucas Van Ness. I know that not everybody's the biggest fan, or not everybody's watched Lucas Van Ness because he didn't start at Iowa. And actually, I don't think made a start at Iowa last year. But that dude is a monster. Like 6'5", I think 272, was uber productive as a rotational rusher. That dude is a monster. He is so much like Aiden Hutchinson. He's like 2 inches shorter than Aiden Hutchinson, but I think has almost the same arm length. He is just simply a monster. I would absolutely, if the Lions walked out with even like Christian Gonzalez at 6, and then they traded up to like 10 for Lucas Van Ness, or they, did whatever. If they walk out of the first round with those 2 players, that would be such a dream come true. Or like I put out a mock draft this morning on Twitter just because I was bored, and it had Jalen Carter at 6, Lucas Van Ness at 18, and then you address cornerback in the 2nd and 3rd round. Like that would be an elite defensive line. I think the Lions need to walk out with the defensive linemen. The edge rush was good. The pass rush was good. I even thought like the defensive line on rushing downs for the most part was good last season, but I would take anybody of those top 3 and add them to our defensive line in a heartbeat, because it's not finished. It's not a top 10 defensive line in football yet. And the Lions have the offensive line to dominate anybody. Now they need the defensive line to go out and shut down the run, to go get after the passer. And I think they have the pass rushers, but I think they could still use more stars. And of course, as Brad Holmes so famously said, you can never have too many pass rushers. Kool-Aid and Cornbread, member of the channel. How is it going? Says praying for Carter at 6. I'm right there with you. One Pride 40 says, give me Anderson. I'll take either one. I think as of right now, my board would go Jalen Carter, because I think defensive tackle and interior pressure and pass rush is more of a need. And I think, of course, I just have Jalen Carter graded as the best player in this class. But I would go Jalen Carter, then I would go Will Anderson, and then I would go Tyree Wilson. But if we're walking away with any of them, and honestly, by the end, I'm like 90% convinced Lucas Van Ness is going to be ahead of Tyree Wilson for me. But I would go any of those 4, even in the top 6. But I think those top 3 of Carter Wilson and Anderson should be the selection. I think it's safer than any cornerback, and I think the upside is just as high. Tim Hutchinson says either one. I don't think Brad Holmes can really go wrong in the top 6 right now, right? 3 quarterbacks are going to be gone. Carolina's taking one. Houston's taking one. You're pretty sure that the Colts are taking one. You don't know what Arizona's going to do, and you don't know what Seattle's going to do. But even if they take Carter and Anderson, or Anderson and Wilson, you're left with one of the big 3 defensive linemen. Anderson's statistics look better. They do. He has more sacks, but he also plays a different position than, Wilson did play outside. He did play edge, but they played different games. And then, of course, Carter plays inside while Anderson plays outside. And again, I talked about this the other day. I'm just throwing my guy in there because this is one of my favorite prospects. Lucas Van Ness, if he played the same amount of snaps as Aiden Hutchinson, statistically would have also had 17.5 sacks last year. So statistically from there, at least statistically from an efficiency standpoint, that guy is also an elite product and an elite prospect. So that's another option out there as well. I think if he played like he should have at Iowa, as far as like the coaches gave him the playing time he deserved, we would be also talking about him as a top 5 pick. But hopefully, I mean, hopefully he lands with the Lions at 18. That would be like the most ideal situation possible, but we're going to wait and see. Taking a look at linebacker, and of course, if any news breaks while we're live, I do have Twitter pulled up over here, but I am not necessarily constantly checking it. So if there is another signing by Brad Holmes or even the Bears or anything like that, of course, let me know so that we can go out and, obviously grade the pickup and, see how everything's going. But okay, we got Tim Hutchinson back with another comment. It says Houston did not get Jimmy G. They're going to draft it. Where did Jimmy G go? Did he go back to San Francisco or did he go over to Las Vegas? I didn't see necessarily anything related to Jimmy Garoppolo. So if you know where he went, let me know. I would assume he wouldn't go back to San Francisco. My best guess would be Vegas, but I'm not sure. I saw that they were in on him. But regardless, Houston didn't get Jimmy G. They got a drafted quarterback, leaving only Arizona to take one of the dogs. I think we get lucky, like in the Sewell draft, and get one. I hope so. The best thing I could do. Okay, Raiders. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I think the most likely scenario right now is I think Tyree Wilson does go to the Cardinals. I think he's going to get the same hype eventually as Trayvon Walker did last year. I think he's going to go above Will Anderson. I think Will Anderson is probably going to go to Seattle because edge rusher is the more premier position and there's not the off the field issues. And I think Jalen Carter is going to fall right into the lap of the Detroit Lions. Now, whether the Lions choose to draft him or not is up to Brad Holmes. From the talent side, I can tell you that I would absolutely draft Jalen Carter. If the legal stuff is okay, if it comes back and it's like, hey, he'll have to pay fines, he'll have to do community service, he'll have to do whatever the case is, right? But it's not going to affect his playing career, I would go out and draft Jalen Carter. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not in there interviewing him. I've never met Jalen Carter, never talked to Jalen Carter. I don't know all the details about the situation because I wasn't there. I'm not a police officer. Haven't heard anything personally about it. But just from the talent side of the ball, strictly the talent side of the ball, and knowing that Brad Holmes and the Lions and the NFL has way more information than I do on this, if the Lions draft Jalen Carter, it is a home run slam dunk pick. I mean, you cannot have a better option, a better talent at number 6. And hopefully, if the Lions don't love Jalen Carter, then they can bargain a trade down and they can go get a couple extra picks. This says Carter's in the football. Again, I've never talked to Jalen Carter. I have no idea what his interviews look like. I know that I saw an article that the Arizona Cardinals had a really good interview with Jalen Carter and they walked away feeling very strongly about him. So it's possible the Cardinals even go that Jalen Carter route, leaving one of the top edge rushers to the Detroit Lions. Lots of different paths that the Lions could be taking, or that anybody can be taking. But as far as the linebacker market, I think this is the next market that the Lions are going to try to kick in. Of course, TJ Edwards did sign with the Bears. I think this is a great signing for the Bears. A little bit scared about it, but not too scared. I think DeAndre Swift will still make him look silly in the open field. But on a serious note, I am a little bit worried about TJ Edwards. It was a very good value deal. I think $19 million over 3 years is actually relatively cheap for somebody to go to Chicago. Really good signing by the Bears. Genuinely, non-biasedly, very, very good signing by the Chicago Bears. I know Zach Cunningham is an option from Tennessee. I don't think he's very good in coverage, but he's a very good run stopper. Deion Jones is very fast. Obviously, Levante David and Eric Kendricks are both older linebackers. This doesn't necessarily mean anything, but the market value for Levante David is 9.7 based off of some of the others. And, Bobby Wagner's right here is 10 million just because we were talking about him prior. But, overall, would I pay Levante David $9.7 million to be a linebacker here? Probably not. Would I want Levante David to be a linebacker here? Yeah, probably. Both things can be true. Just, taking a look at PFR again, right? We're going to go over and look at Levante David. He is a Pro Bowler. He's an All Pro. I think he was even maybe a member of a Decades team at some point. I think one of the most truly underrated linebackers in NFL history. 124 tackles last year, had 3 sacks, had a fumble recovery, had a forced fumble, 5 passes defended, didn't get any interceptions, but his missed tackle rate was 6.8, which is the lowest of his career. Missed 9 tackles, made 124. A really, really good player overall. I think he'd be pretty expensive, naturally pretty expensive, because he's a veteran linebacker who's looking to cash in and kind of get the last contract of his career. But again, I think that Levante David would be more expensive, but obviously a more veteran option. You have Eric Kendricks, somebody that I think is good in coverage, but kind of like Bobby Wagner did take a step back. Devin Bush seems like the more traditional Brad Holmesy signing, right? Former first round pick. I think actually former top 10 pick, somebody that has a lot of athletic upside, but really isn't coming together all that well on some of the other parts of his game. Again, Anthony Walker seems like a pretty Brad Holmesy signing, somebody that is underrated and super productive, but isn't necessarily talked about. My favorite is Aziz Alshire, a linebacker from San Francisco, plays off ball, is a pretty good coverage linebacker, really good leader, only 25, shouldn't be super expensive. Again, just super, super good player. I don't know a lot about Damian Wilson or Okoronkwo. Not totally sure about Okoronkwo. Obviously, the big name being Tremaine Edmonds. I looked at this the other day. I'm pretty sure it's like, okay, 11 million is not actually that bad. I think if we were to pay 11 million to Tremaine Edmonds, I think that'd be pretty good value. I think actually low key a 4-year 44 million or even 3-year 33 million, like we just gave to Cortland Sutton. Keep saying Cortland, like we just gave to Cameron Sutton, is probably good value. Actually, really good value for Tremaine Edmonds. I would absolutely pay that. Kazir White, a player that I was a big fan of last year in free agency, ended up going to the Eagles for pretty cheap. Only 26, just really good, well-rounded young linebacker. I think would fit really well in Detroit. Going down the list, we obviously have Corey Littleton, somebody that I believe was a pretty big name when he first entered free agency a few years ago, but didn't really have the greatest stint with his last team. Obviously, you can bring back Alex Anzalone. You can go out and try to get Leighton Vander Esch, again, one of those former first-round picks that has put up some production, but just isn't always healthy, but also isn't always the most productive player on the field. Doesn't put everything together yet. You have Chris Board, who I thought was good last year, but you can certainly upgrade. Rashawn Evans from Atlanta, former first-round pick, good tackler. You have Quan Alexander, only 28 for the Jets. The Jets just signed Quincy Williams. So that is potentially a pipeline where it's like, oh, we just signed a linebacker. We don't have the money for another linebacker. So let's go out and, let this guy walk. I mean, Quan Alexander is somebody that I've talked about for a couple of years now. I know that Jayon Brown is another player from Vegas that was pretty productive and could fit the Lions linebacking core, without having too much of a financial impact onto the Detroit Lions. Just going down, those are probably the big options. He went to the Raiders, yeah. Jermaine Pratt, 26 years old, is somebody that I think is one of the top 10 coverage linebackers in the NFL. His value about 10.6. I think the Lions could really use a coverage linebacker. Excuse me, I got the hiccups after class. Again, I think he could be really, really good for the Detroit Lions. I know that coverage has not been their strong suit necessarily, and they could certainly use a coverage linebacker. So I would 100% be looking at Jermaine Pratt. Bobby Okereke, again, very good player, but I think has a lot of connections to the Panthers, which is probably where he's going to go. Drew Tranquil, young, only 27, pretty productive for the Chargers last year, for the Chargers. But, I mean, there's a lot of good linebackers. There's a ton of productive linebackers. There's a ton of good linebackers. Haha, I forgot I was lagging a bit because I paused. Oh, that's okay. No worries about it. No worries at all. I asked the question, so I didn't know the answer. I appreciate you telling me. But, overall, there's probably 5 or 6 linebackers that I would take free agent market kind of quiet. Yeah, I haven't really heard any breaking news over the last couple of minutes. I mean, right away there was a bunch of big splashes. This one's from Don Kleiman. Aaron Rodgers is being traded to the New York Jets. I'll pull that over for us. Aaron Rodgers is being reportedly traded by the New York Jets. Steelers fans are sick right now about losing Sutton. I think we got a good one too. I'm very happy with that. Oh, well, there you go. A linebacker's off the board. As I said, I liked Jermaine Pratt. I thought he was a super high quality coverage linebacker. 3-year, 21. That's exactly what. Well, probably not exactly, but pretty close to what I would have gone for. 10.3 in his first year, 15 over the next 2 years. I mean that's probably what I would have paid him as well. That would have been the ideal contract, but unfortunately, he is no longer on the market. We can tick another linebacker off there. Hearing Aaron Rodgers to the Jets is done. History is repeating itself between Jets and Green Bay. Another Cameron Sutton highlight. This is such a beautiful interception by Cameron Sutton. Welcome home. Broncos have stiff competition from McGlinchey, from the Bears. Broncos a pivot. So, yeah, not a lot really happening on the free agency market. Obviously, I mean, the Jets acquiring Aaron Rodgers is big. Hopefully, we're going to stay on. I have class at 5, so I was planning on staying here probably until like 4:30 until I had to actually go to class and get my education. But yeah, not a whole lot going on right now. The Broncos given a big contract to Mike McGlinchey is both funny, but also I'm glad he's not a Chicago Bear. 80 with 60 guaranteed to the Chiefs for Jawan Taylor. Who's going to stop DJ Moore? Cameron, Brad Holmes, signed Cam Sutton. I think Cam Sutton will be all right. I think he'll be okay. Yeah. But yeah, I'm kind of a quiet free agency market right now. I'm not going to lie. But also, the one thing I don't get, which I was thinking about this earlier, right? The tampering period started at noon. Like, the whole idea is like you can't negotiate contracts, you can't, talk to these free agents really until this tampering window opens. And then the Chicago Bears agree to this deal with this linebacker, and like all these teams are agreeing to this deal, all these deals in like an hour. Like, I think the Chicago Bears signed TJ Edwards like 20 minutes after the window opened. And I was just thinking, like, does it really take that short of a time to negotiate like a full-on NFL contract with incentives and guarantees and like all of that? Or is it like not fully fleshed out yet and there's still more to negotiate? I don't know. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, it seems kind of sketchy that all these teams have contracts lined up. So like 15 minutes after the window opens, you're like, we're signing this guy, we're signing that guy. Like, I don't know. It just seemed kind of weird. I'm excited for Sutton. Could care less anymore about Rodgers and the Jets or Packers. Let him hold them both as long as they can. Honestly, that is the ideal move right there. The longer Rodgers stays a Packer, because we know he's not going to be a Packer probably next year, right? He's pretty much said, like, I'm not coming back. And I'm pretty sure the Packers want at least a year to figure out what they have in Jordan Love. The longer he's out, like, the longer that he kind of holds both teams captive. Like, as long as he's a Packer, the Packers can't sign anybody. As long as he's a Packer, the Jets can't really go out and do anything. Like, I really hope that the Packers don't get a first-round pick, because if the Packers have 2 first-round picks, that'd make things a little more complicated. But, I mean, overall, like, just, I don't know, just The whole situation is interesting. But the longer I think that he holds both teams hostage, the longer the Lions have to negotiate without really having to worry about the Packers doing anything. Not that they ever really do anything in free agency. Excuse me, I just needed a little water. Bryant Waller says, "What's up?" As well as Ron T333 says, "I would love to see him become the next Sewell." I think we all would. But I mean, Sewell also had quite a few character concerns, so it happens. It's okay. Joey Detroit Lions 1 says, "I like the Sutton move." I also like the Sutton move. I think it's an aggressive move by Brad Holmes, but I think it's a good move and probably the right move to be made at this point. The Vikings have agreed to terms with Josh Oliver on a 3-year, $21 million deal. Are they just not going to re-sign TJ Hawkinson? Like, they just traded a second and a third round pick for TJ Hawkinson to pay Josh Oliver 3 years, $21 million. Like, it's not a huge contract, but they don't really have the money to go out and sign a second tight end to that kind of a deal. And as far as I'm aware, TJ Hawkinson is still on the open market, which would be incredibly funny. Like super funny if the Lions just go out and they're just like, "Hey, we want TJ Hawkinson, so let's bring him back and we'll just run it back." Maybe he's not a free agent. I thought TJ Hawkinson's contract ran out this year. I thought they would have to pay him. TJ Hawkinson, unless they've already signed him. Okay, so he is signed through the 2023 season, supposedly. So, never mind. I was thinking they still had to re-sign him, but still, that seems like a very odd contract to give out for a team that just traded for, I mean, like genuinely a top 10 tight end in all of football. Unfortunately, I believe he would be the next Fairley. I mean, I disagree, but we're going to have to wait and see. Sewell had no character concern. No, not Sewell, Sue, S-U-H. Ndamukong Suh had some like character, like, oh, he's kind of a bad person deal going on. Not Sewell. Penei Sewell was fine. Penei Sewell was like the perfect prospect, and I'm so glad the Lions got him. And that's a mid-signing. What, the Josh Oliver contract? Yeah, I know. My whole point was that it was a very weird contract. Got to re-sign Tomlinson as well as Jay Jettas. Yeah, I've heard that they're going to try to get Jettas under contract, but I'm not totally sure what's going on there because I've heard that they are going to do that, right? I've seen reports where it's like, oh, they're going to try to re-sign Justin Jefferson, which makes a lot of sense because the longer that they wait, the more money Justin Jefferson's going to make. But just overall, it seems like, I don't know, Josh Oliver seems like an odd pickup to me, especially for 3 years, $21 million. Like, that's a decent sized contract. So, I mean, we're going to wait and see. But yeah, I think that the Detroit Lions, I mean, Cameron Sutton, I mean, what else do you need to say? Next gen stats. Courtland Sutton allowed just 32 receptions on 72 targets in 2022. His 44.4% completion percentage allowed us tied for fourth lowest in a season since 2016. Minimum of 50 targets. Sutton will join the Lions secondary, who allowed the highest, I believe that's completion percentage, something, CPOE in the NFL. I mean, the more I look at this pick, I will say my initial thought was I think the Lions overpaid. I don't think Courtland Sutton, I don't think Cameron Sutton is necessarily worth 11 a year. But, and I mean, I'm still going to do more research. I still want to look into it and see how everything's going. But this does, as far as from the statistics side of it, it seems like a very strong hire by the Detroit Lions. I think the Vikings picked up his 5th-year option. I thought the Lions picked up his 5th-year option. That's what he was playing on last year. But I could be completely off with that. Contracts are not my strong suit. So that is always potentially an option as well. But going back to free agents, right? The Lions obviously do need linebacker. I think defensive tackle or like just in general defensive line could be another position of need. Obviously, you have Javon Hargrave with his massive deal to the 49ers. You have Chase Winovich, who I didn't actually see but signed a decent deal to Houston. But I think that the defensive line is probably the third place that they're going to go. I think linebacker's next, but we kind of talked about linebacker since the Lions didn't overpay at all. That was my initial reaction. I was in class and I literally read the number and then I went back to studying Spanish. But overall, I think it is a good pick. The more I look at it, the more I'm like, okay, that's top 15, 16 money. I think that that's what he played like last year. Good value for the Lions. I don't believe that they overpaid, and if they did, it was by the smallest of margins. But looking at defensive line, I think the Lions could look to add here as well. Their pass rush and defensive line and overall run stopping ability was good last year, but it wasn't elite. It wasn't anything where it's like, wow, there is no room to get better. There is no room to improve. And I think that you could go out and I think Dalvin Tomlinson's a very good option. I believe that, going down, Calais Campbell got released today. I don't think he'll be a great option. I was just making the statement. I know that Jaron Reed is a player that a lot of people liked. I know that Jared Taylor is a former first-round pick. You could always bring Kerry Hyder home. I can't believe he's 31 already. That seems pretty crazy. It's not the deepest class, I will not lie. Not the deepest. I'd say defensive tackle more than defensive end. But it's not the deepest defensive tackle class. But, you do have guys like Fletcher Cox, who could be a good one-year rental. You do have Dalvin Tomlinson. I think Shelby Harris was, I think, released today. I believe David Onyemata was re-signed by the Saints. You have Sheldon Rankins from the Jets. You have Jared Tillery. Potentially Ndamukong Suh, I think, still definitely had some value. So I think that's another place the Lions could look. Last year was Hawk's fourth year. The Lions picked up TJ's fifth year, and it was carried over from. Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. So he will be a free agent next year, or his contract will expire next year. That makes a lot of sense. Big need is defensive line. I don't disagree, but I don't know if it's the best option to go for in free agency. Right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of guys that fit the mantra of Brad Holmes, either previous years or, as we know right now, this year. I think the best option would be Dalvin Tomlinson from the Minnesota Vikings. He's 29. I think still has a couple really good years left. Is a good run stopper. Is a good guy that collapsed the pocket. I think would slide in really well next to Aleem McNeil. And having that interior kind of rotational trio of Aleem McNeil, the guy they re-signed this morning, Isaiah Buggs, and Dalvin Tomlinson, and then maybe adding another rotational piece or sliding players in and outside. I think that would be a good trio, obviously potentially drafting Jalen Carter to make it a quartet. But yeah, I believe defensive line is a need, as Joey, Detroit Lions fan 1, was saying, but I'm not sure it's the biggest need to address in the free agency market. $11 million a season for a starting cornerback is not bad. Yeah, again, I wasn't super familiar with the cornerback market as far as yearly salary. But again, after looking at it for a little bit, not as bad as I had originally thought it would be. The Vikings GM is horrible. He's making some decisions right now that are certainly questionable for sure. I'm not entirely sure what the Vikings general manager is doing. That comment, of course, coming in from One Pride 40, one of the big Lions supporters on this channel. What do I think of Leighton Vander Esch? I think Leighton Vander Esch, I did talk about this a little earlier, but I'll go over it again. I think Leighton Vander Esch is a good option. I think that, again, fits that Dan Campbell, fits that Brad Holmes kind of mantra of player that they like. But, he's not my number one option. But if he is the option that the Lions go out and end up getting, I think it would be a good move. I think it would be, obviously depending on the price, like a solid, like 6 out of 10 free agency move. Not like the best player, but I think would upgrade the linebacking core with some length and range at linebacker. could use a running back in the draft. I also believe that to be true. Running back is a position I think the Lions should address in the draft. There's a lot of good ones. Some of my favorites, I really, really like Kenny McIntosh from Georgia. I really like Mo Ibrahim from Minnesota, especially if you're looking for like a one-to-one Jamal Williams replacement. Those are my two kind of late round guys. There's a lot more that you can obviously go get, like Zach Charbonnet on day 2. Israel Esbanakanda from Pitt is somebody that I'm a huge, huge fan of. I mean, he's lightning quick. I think he would be really good behind this line. But I mean, I wouldn't go touch running back in free agency. I just don't think it's worth it. You'll get a rookie running back with probably the same production for a fraction of the price. Excuse me. But I mean, you'll get a rookie running back for a fraction of the price. Chase Brown is another one that I think would be really, really good. I want Tyree Wilson. He's going to be a dog. Like I said, I think the best thing the Lions can do is go defensive line yet again on round 1, right? You go either Carter, Anderson, or Tyree Wilson. One of the 3 is going to be there. So I think you're pretty good from that aspect. Beefing up the run defense is the biggest need now. They have signed a cornerback, either a run-stopping defensive tackle or an off-ball linebacker. Yep, those are the things we've been talking about, right? A run-stopping defensive tackle like Dalvin Tomlinson, like Sheldon Rankins, somebody that's going to just collapse the pocket, move people around, push people into the backfield, or an off-ball linebacker that has range, instincts, and can tackle very well. He got wrecked by the Lions and the Packers for wide receivers. Who's he? He. Oh, the Vikings general manager. Yes. Yeah, Chase Brown, a player that I also very much like. Ibrahim is 25. They might be able to get him in UDFA. That is true. That is super true. I don't project Ibrahim to be going anywhere before like the 6th round, but he is a super good running back. I mean, he is, like you said, older and does have some injury concerns, but he also runs with a lot of contact balance. He also is really, really hard to bring down. He is quick to make cuts and decisions. He's powerful on the goal line. If you're talking a Jamal Williams replacement, but getting a little bit younger than Jamal Williams and much cheaper, I think Mohamed Ibrahim as like a 6th or 7th round swing would be perfect to replace the production of Jamal Williams. Sheldon Rankins versus Ashawn Robinson. Who do you grab? I mean, I think it's hard to say. Probably Sheldon Rankins for a 1-year deal because he's only 28, but that's just my personal opinion. What do you think about Bijan at 18? Because he ain't making it to round 2. Like I said, I wouldn't touch Bijan in the 1st round, not because I don't think he's worth the pick, because I think that the draft is so deep at wide receiver. And, we can go look at this, and I'm not going to go through a mock draft because I'm just not. It's not that time. We're not ready for that yet. But I mean, we can just search by running backs and go. Bijan's a good starter. Jamar Gibbs would be a starter. Zach Charbonnet would be great. Devon Arcane would be huge and be like a big, big play upside for this team. Dwayne McBride is, really, really slippery as a running back. Tank Bigsby kind of reminds me of Jamal Williams, somebody that probably won't take it the distance every time, but is going to get you 4 or 5 yards consistently every single down. I haven't watched Kendre Miller yet. Yeah, I am. My microphone's having some troubles. I think I fixed it, but we're gonna find out. But yeah, Roshan Johnson, I think, is a very good player. I think he got very much overshadowed at Texas. Zach Evans is good. Chase Brown is good. Keaton Mitchell's good. Israel Abandoned Canada is good, like I mentioned. Kenny McIntosh, Mo Ibrahim, Chris Rodriguez. Like, I mean, you can go from top to bottom in this draft class and pretty much find a starting running back wherever you're going to look. I'm sorry, but I believe if we don't get Bijan, it will bite us in the butt. I don't care if we're not supposed to take one around one. I, I mean, like I said, he's the best offensive weapon in this class probably, but I would not take running back in the first round because it is a super deep class. Where well, it says we are to get backup quarterback, but I'm assuming it's where to get. Probably in the draft, probably day 3 of the NFL draft is where you're gonna ideally get your future quarterback. There's at least 20 legit running backs in this year's class. I don't know about 20, but there's a lot. Charbonnet would be super nice behind this line. I think the Arian Foster comp is pretty good. Yeah, I know. I think the microphone should be fixed now. StreamYard has this weird thing where every once in a while it'll stop using the microphone and stop sensing it. So I'm not sure what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, the running back class is like, it's pretty crazy how deep the class is because, I mean, I think Bijan would be a starting running back. I think Jamar would be. I think Charbonnet would be. Devon Arcane, probably not a starter, but certainly an impact player. Dwayne McBride, same thing. Tank Bigsby, I think, can be a starter. Tajay Spears can be a starter. Deuce Vaughn can be a starter. I think Roshan Johnson could be the running back steal of this draft class. Or Zach Evans. Both of them are players that I'm really high on as running back prospects that you can get on day 3. But yeah, overall, very good running back class, and I would definitely draft one before I decide to go out and pay one veteran money. Let's see. Rap sheet reporting the NFL has nothing happened as of now between Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. There's apparently conflicting information out there. Let's see. Vikings, yep, signed Josh Oliver. What a weird signing. What an odd signing by the Vikings. You just trade for TJ Hawkinson, and then you pay another tight end 3 years, $21 million to come back up TJ Hawkinson, who's actually now making more money than him. So maybe he'll be the starter. The NFC runs through Detroit. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, I have no clue. But, more about Cam Sutton. I'm assuming, yeah, Jerry Jacobs is probably very happy about this one. He's been out recruiting for the Lions for the last however long. He recruited Jalen Ramsey, and then he recruited Darius Slay. So, I mean, I'm not shocked that he is happy with the Cameron Sutton signing. But there's not really a whole lot else going on. Steve-O says the Vikings weren't re-signing Irv Smith, so they needed a backup tight end. I guess, but I feel like you could get a better tight end, or at least a better value tight end in 3 years, $21 million, when you're already kind of out of money and you just traded multiple top 100 picks for a tight end who put up 900 yards last season for the Minnesota Vikings. But moving back to free agency, like I said, you could potentially address defensive tackle here. I wouldn't. Again, I would wait till the draft if possible. Quarterback, I think they can go either way with this. I would personally prefer developing a backup. But if you go out and you go get, say, like a Kyle Allen or like a Nick Mullins, I think would fit the situation pretty good. Or, I mean, Nate Sudfeld knows the system. You have Philip Walker, who's kind of a more scrambler, make something out of it. You have Gardner Minshew, who can come in and be a backup. Like, there's definitely options. Karen Rodgers likes to hold Green Bay and the media hostage. Yeah, I don't know what his whole fixation is on doing that, but he definitely likes to cause some drama. That is not uncommon for Miss Aaron Rodgers. What do you think of Kalijah Cansey? I like Kalijah Cansey. I think Kalijah Cansey is a very good prospect. I don't buy the Aaron Donald hype. He's not going to be Aaron Donald. He doesn't collapse the pocket like Aaron Donald. He's not nearly as strong, or doesn't have nearly as strong a base as Aaron Donald did coming out of Pittsburgh, but I think he's a good player. I think he's more quick than powerful. He's kind of more of a flashy player than a hand in the dirt, doing the things nobody realizes type thing. He's more of a flashy player, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, right? He gets the production, he gets the sacks. I think he had 17, I almost said 17. He had 7.5 sacks last year for the Pittsburgh Panthers. And I think he'd be really good. I mean, he gets around the guards more than going through them. He's a good pass rusher. He'll get sacks. He'll get you pressures. He'd be a very good player for the Detroit Lions. Kind of, I think, fits the bill of like at least the mantra of a undersized guy isn't always the highest picked or isn't always like the number one prospect, but can come here and turn into a very good player. Again, I think his quickness, his hands, his ability to get around people is what's going to make him successful in the NFL, not so much his ability to push the pocket and collapse it and allow Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston to feast on the edges. But yeah, I think Kalijah Kancey is a very good prospect. I have him, I think, as a top 20 or 25 player in this class for sure. He's not my number one defensive lineman. He's not my number one fit for the Lions, but he'd be a good option, I think, at 18 or even later if possible. Honestly, I could care less of this Rodgers move. The only reason I think it makes a lot of difference to the Lions is because obviously the Packers are going to get compensation. And I don't know what compensation that's going to look like, but it'll probably be a first-round pick from the Jets. Like, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is worth a first-round pick because he's only going to play like probably a year, maybe 2 at the most. I wouldn't sacrifice a potential future starter, especially the way they just drafted. For Aaron Rodgers, I would give like maybe a second and a fifth, but that's just me not valuing a very old and very locker room distracting Aaron Rodgers. I compared it to Geno Atkins. I think, again, Geno Atkins, at least from what I remember, was much better at collapsing the pocket and moving people. But I think that, as far as the undersized comp goes, I think that also makes a lot of sense. How do you feel about signing Edmonds? I'm assuming you're talking about Tremaine Edmonds, the linebacker. Again, I think a good value. I think a good deal. We looked before. His average value is projected to be somewhere in the like $10.5 to $11 million range at this point, as these are kind of all the big names, all the big contracts. Obviously, Derek Carr got signed before. Mike McGlinchey is now the second highest paid free agent in this class, which is kind of crazy to think about. Hargrave got a big deal. Taylor got a big deal. Garoppolo got a big deal to Vegas. 3 years, 67. That is quite a lot. And then Cameron Sutton, of course, getting 33, but a big drop off between the two. Will McDonald is awesome. He was double teamed most of last year. Yeah, I think he would be good too. I wouldn't draft him in the first, but if he's there in the second, I would take Will McDonald. Again, kind of fits the mantra of not everybody's talking about him. Could be a good culture fit, but I think Will McDonald's good. I wouldn't take him in the first, especially not the top 20. But if you're talking like the second round, I would take him at the second round pick. How do you feel if we sign Slay? Well, we would have to pay and trade for Darius Slay because he's not a free agent. But I think I put this out on Twitter this morning. It would be the perfect PR move for the Detroit Lions to bring back Darius Slay. But in reality, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He's 32, and I know he's still very good. Like, don't get me wrong. He's a very good player, but he's not as good as he was a few years ago. You can tell that he's definitely declining athletically. He's still a competitor. He still gets his hands on the football. He still knows the game very well, still reads the game very well, but he's also expensive and he's aging. And now you just signed Cameron Sutton. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore. Not that it made a lot of sense before because of the price tag and because he's probably going to start falling off here at some point relatively soon. I like the nostalgia aspect of it. I like the PR aspect of like, hey, we're bringing a fan favorite home. But realistically, and it would probably only cost you like a fifth round pick or like maybe even less than that. But I just don't see it. I just don't see it making a lot of sense. Clutch has 30-inch arms, and teams like their defensive linemen in the draft over first to have longer arms. I don't know if he goes in the first. I think he will because I don't think the defensive tackle class behind him is all that special. And I think he brings a very unique skill set to the defensive tackle class. I guess we'll go defensive line because that's kind of what they're technically classified as. Kalijah Cansey after Jalen Carter, I think, is the best defensive lineman. Mozzie Smith is very good. I'm not a big fan of Brian Brzee. I have him as a top second round player. I don't have him very highly. But Ika is more of a no. So is Moro Ajomo. So is Keanu Benton. Like, there's not a lot of interior pass rushers in this class. So I think Kalijah Cansey's quick enough. I think he's fast enough. I think he's productive enough to go in the first round. He doesn't fit the measurements, but everything else from on the field makes sense for them to take him or for somebody to take him. We have to get a linebacker. I'm looking at either Edmonds, David, or Bobby Wagner. Again, those are all three very expensive free agents. I think that if you're going to go expensive, you should go Tremaine Edmonds. He has the most upside. He has the longevity that you're looking for a long-term big money contract. All those guys, you're talking $9 to $12 million a year. After a big contract signing, I'm not sure where the Lions sit financially. I don't know how the Sutton contract is going to affect the cap. I'm not entirely sure, but the only player I'd sign out of those three is Edmonds because David and Bobby Wagner are both very old and kind of on the athletic decline. Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner just tweeted about the Rodgers trade. Seems like a done deal. Yeah, I know, Sam. I know.
Did you see the tweet like 3 minutes ago?
Yeah. I saw the one like a little bit ago. I didn't see them tweet about it.
There was one literally 3 minutes ago.
I didn't even process that was you until I read your name. Oh, Von Bell's going to the Panthers. That's pretty good.
Jason Kelsey just resigned.
I saw that this morning. I did not see Aaron Rodgers.
Here, I'll send it to you.
Okay. I saw this one by Don Kleiman that says Aaron Rodgers is being traded. It's done, but there's no details or anything.
Here, do you want the Garrett Wilson?
I mean, I can go find it, yeah. Garrett Wilson. What did Garrett Wilson tweet out? Yeah, you should send it to me because I'm not gonna find it. Okay. You did? Oh, probably. Yeah, I registered that after. Thank you. I've been hearing that we might end up drafting Anderson or Carter. Which would you? I would prefer Jalen Carter because I think he's a better player and he's a bigger position of need. But either one would be a steal, to be completely honest. Either one would be a very, very good player. Who's the longest tenured Lion? That's probably Taylor Decker. He's the oldest player on the Lions, and he's been here. I mean, obviously since he was drafted. But yeah, it does say Garrett Wilson. I can finally enjoy my vacation now. Y'all should see this smile on me right now. Garrett Wilson and Bryce Hall. Interesting. We're gonna see. Aaron Rodgers is doing some wild things right now. But as far as who's the longest tenured Lion, I would guess it was Taylor Decker. He was drafted by the Lions and is currently the oldest player on the Lions. So mathematically, that makes a lot of sense in my head that he would be the longest tenured, but I'm not totally sure. I had Josh Oliver valued at 2 years, $6 million, PFF 3 for 10.5. The Vikings 3 years, $21 million. I think they might have overpaid. I'm going to vote because Jared Goff is the best quarterback in the North. Packers finally have a new quarterback in 2020. First round pick Jordan Love. The last two full-time starters became Hall of Famers. I really hope that doesn't happen again. That would make me really, really sad. But we're going to apparently find out. As I said, Von Bell does come to the Carolina Panthers. I think Von Bell is a good safety prospect. Yes, he was here for Caldwell. He was drafted in 2016. He might have been the first pick that Jim Caldwell ever made as the head coach. But yes, he was definitely here under Caldwell. Because Taylor Decker's the only Detroit Lion, I believe, or like the only drafted Detroit Lion to currently have playoff experience. Mike McGlinchey to the Broncos, Cameron Sutton to the Lions. Big move there. But yeah, not a whole lot else going on right now in the free agent market. This tight end, that still blows my mind that they would spend that much money on a free agent. Decker was Quinn's first draft pick. Okay, that makes sense too. I don't know. I know he was here in 2016. I'm not exactly sure when Caldwell came around. It might have been the year before that. Not entirely sure. I know we had Hansen for a, if you mean ever. I don't know. Is it time for Harris to go? Well, Will Harris is a free agent and has yet to be re-signed, which is, I think, good. Probably the right move for the Lions and not to re-sign Will Harris because he's just not very good. But if you're talking about Charles Harris, also probably yes. Just the whole edge rushing position is that's true. Yeah, that's right. Caldwell's first year was 2014. I should have known that. So either way, your question, yes, Taylor Decker is the longest tenured player. I would cut Charles Harris. I don't think he has a whole lot of value left on this team. If you can trade him for like a 7, I would do that because there's been a couple of veterans that have been moved for 7th round picks. I don't think either Harris should be on the team next year. Will Harris can go hopefully find a job somewhere in free agency. And I would cut Charles Harris if you can't trade him, but I would also trade him for like a future 7th round pick because that future 7th round pick is probably more valuable than what Charles Harris is going to be for you. The Lions, I don't believe, have made any more moves. They've made a bunch this morning. As I said, Isaiah Buggs, 2 years, $6 million, up to $6 million. I think 2.1 guaranteed. And then Craig Reynolds re-signs, likely to be the running back 3, but currently is the running back 2. And then Brad Holmes went to work this morning, re-signing and tendering Anthony Pittman, Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, Benito Jones, as well as Scott Daly. All of them being not starters, but all of them being impact players. Scott Daly, the starting long snapper. Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra splitting time as really the primary tight end. I think that'll likely be a pattern that repeats itself, but having James Mitchell slide in there as well. Anthony Pittman, a good special teams linebacker, and Benito Jones, a good rotational player. I don't want Will Harris back, but he probably has value because of his versatility. He probably has value. Being a former top 100 pick, he's going to find a spot somewhere, but I would not bring him back. Like, he's had 4 years to get better, and he just hasn't. Okay, that's not true. He has gotten better. He's just not getting better fast enough to the point where we can keep him. But, yeah, just my chair is super squeaky right now. I like Badgley. I don't mind Badgley. I know he missed a kick in Green Bay, and I know he missed a kick against the Buffalo Bills. But I blame that missed kick against the Bills on the announcer because he completely jinxed Michael Badgley. And then, kicking in Lambeau is just kind of hard. Trade Harris for a 7th round pick and draft Moody. Wishful thinking. Yeah, I would be a little shocked if Moody was available at the 7th round. I think he is going to probably be drafted maybe in the 6th, if not the really, really late 5th. I'm trying to think of where the other kickers were drafted last year, and I think it was right around the late 5th, the early 6th round is where the first kickers and punters started going off the board. That's where I would assume Jake Moody is going to go. He is the best kicker in college football. He's just very good, and I don't think you're going to see too many I don't think you're going to see Jake Moody too far past the 5th round, in my opinion. I think I might have just found the Sauce Gardner one, but I'm not sure. Um, yes, I did. I mean, he didn't specifically say that they were going to sign Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know what else would make his day so happy other than like maybe if they cut Zach Wilson. There's another free agent. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but Von Bell signs with the Panthers, formerly of the Saints, now of the Carolina Panthers. Good stint with the Cincinnati Bengals as well. I think that's a really good signing for them. Good instinctual safety, plays really well. How cool is it to announce the same Brown pick? Pretty cool. It turned out that he also became a pretty good Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver, so that's also really kind of cool. Yeah, it was very neat. That's all I really have to say. It was a very cool, unique experience that I think is very hard to describe without having experienced it, but probably the highlight of my life. It's probably the best way to put it. I thought that was a completely different player. That's just Cameron Sutton without his helmet on. I was a little excited. I'm not gonna lie. One of the top cornerback free agents. Cam Sutton might have been the top cornerback free agent. If we go over here to not safeties, to cornerback, Cam Sutton is very much the highest paid safety, but he's only 28, was super productive last year. And when you look at the rest of the classmates for this free agency class, I mean, Marcus Peters is 30, William Jackson is 30, Shaquille Griffin struggles a lot with injuries, Bradley Roby is 30, Ronald Darby is 29 and isn't really coming off the greatest year. James Bradbury was good, but again, 29. Anthony Brown, 29. I don't think he's all that great. Emmanuel Mosley was a good pick up, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's more of a slot guy. Peterson's 32. Eli Apple is not very good. I think the Lions might have walked away with the best cornerback in this class. I'm surprised they haven't re-signed Jamal Williams yet. Yeah, that's the one player I'm still kind of waiting on too. Him and Kaminsky are two guys that I am hoping to see pop up any minute now. Ideally, the Detroit Lions do find a way to bring back both of them. I'm also expecting Evan Brown to be signed away pretty soon. I think he's a starting quality center, and I haven't seen him go anywhere just yet. But we shall continue to wait and see. We do have a little bit more time here, but just overall, not a lot going on. The free agency market was super big early, and there was a lot of big signings, right? Cameron Sutton to the Lions, of course, being one of them. But just kind of going over everything, Jamal Dean going to get a lot, probably. I would assume so, but he's not getting anything from the Lions, which honestly kind of makes me happy because I don't trust Patriots at all. I completely missed Mike White to the Miami Dolphins. Just kind of going over again the signings made so far. You have Derek Carr to the Saints, 4 years, 150. You have Mike McGlinchey to Denver, outbid by Denver over the Chicago Bears. You have him for 5 years, 87 and a half. Javon Hargrave at 30 years old got a 4-year, $84 million extension, or I guess signing. Jawan Taylor goes from Jacksonville to Kansas City. I think that's something that they're going to have to look to replace now. Jimmy Garoppolo got 3 years, 67 to go over to Vegas. Makes a lot of sense. Goes and plays with his old offensive coordinator. You, of course, have Cameron Sutton for 3 years, $33 million, average of 11. You have Connor McGovern for Dallas to Buffalo. Good signing, I think, from Buffalo to improve their offensive line. You have Shai Tully. I don't know much about Shai Tully. I will not lie to you. Jonathan Jones, New England, back to New England, 2 years for 19. Mike White, as I said, did go New York to Miami, division rival switch, but will back up to a Tagovailoa. I think it's a good move. Robert Woods, kind of makes sense to go to Houston. I think that makes a decent amount of sense. Jarrett Stidham also got a contract extension, but instead of going back to Vegas, he went to Denver as he will now be backing up Russell Wilson. You have Danny Johnson, any other? Mike Boone, running back from Denver, got a nice little deal. Chase Winovich, Raekwon McMillan. So there's been some big ones. And then, of course, you have TJ Edwards and Ben Powers, who were both re-signed, or both signed away, excuse me. Don't think Jamal gets signed by us. I don't know. I hope that he does. I hope that he returns to be a Detroit Lion because he's one of my favorite Detroit Lions, and I don't want him to go anywhere else. You have the Bengals signing one of my favorite linebacker prospects in Jermaine Pratt, running back. The running backs do come a dime a dozen. And like I said earlier, you can replace the production that Jamal Williams brought, but it'd be really hard to replace the personality and the locker room presence. I think it'd be really hard to replace the leader. I think it'd be really hard to replace the person. And I think it would really hurt the just overall vibe of the locker room, I guess, like the overall feeling in the locker room, because Jamal Williams is just somebody that, quite honestly, from a personality standpoint, can't be replaced. And I'm not worried about the production. I'm not worried about the yards or the touchdowns. I think you could put pretty much any running back in this draft behind the offensive line and average, the amount of yards per carry that Jamal Williams had last year. Like you could put Roshan Johnson or Zach Evans in the 5th round behind that offensive line, probably get similar results. But as far as just the player, the person, the locker room presence, the leader, those things are hard to replace and hard to find. And for a team that values culture so highly, I think the Lions are going to put in quite a bid for Jamal Williams. We need to part ways with Swift. He's too injury prone. If you can trade him for like a early day 3, late day 2 pick, then maybe. But if you trade DeAndre Swift now, you have one running back on the roster, and it's Craig Reynolds. And I like Craig Reynolds. I think Craig Reynolds is a great running back. I think he rushed for 100 yards against Arizona and looked pretty good doing it. I don't want Craig Reynolds to be my running back 1 going into the season. And I don't want to be forced into drafting Bijan Robinson at the 18th overall pick when it is a super deep running back class. So, I get the Swift part, right? I get the injury concerns. I get the problems and the reasons why people are a little frustrated with DeAndre Swift, but also he's super productive when he's on the field. Like he is one of the most dynamic playmakers at running back. And I know that he can't stay healthy and that, injuries is a really big concern for him. But you can't deny that when he's on the field, he's pretty darn solid. He had 931 scrimmage yards this year and 8 total touchdowns. Like, that's not a bad running back. And he played in 14 games. Like, he's played 40 games over the last 3 years, which I know it seems like he's hurt a lot. And I know it seems like he doesn't really get enough touches or like he just isn't healthy enough to get the touches that he should be getting. But you're talking about a guy that even my camera or my microphone did it again. But yeah, super productive player. And getting rid of that production is not going to make you better. You saw DeAndre Swift at his best is an elite running back in today's game. Like truly an elite running back. He can run the ball, he can catch the ball, he can pretty much do everything you need him to do. And I know that he's not always healthy. He's actually very rarely fully healthy. But you're talking 15 carries for 144 yards. You're talking about averaging 11 yards a carry and then what? I'm trying to see how many yards per touch. 10 yards a touch, 6 yards a touch, 10 yards a touch, 5 yards a touch, 8 yards, 9.75 and 8. Like he is super productive. And I know he missed a few games here and there. And I know even when he came back, he was not necessarily the most utilized wide receiver or utilized weapon, but he's still super productive for this team. And I know people get frustrated and people are saying, oh, like, hey, you need to get rid of him. He's never healthy. He has to go. But who's going to be better than him? What running back are you going to get in free agency or the draft that's going to play 14 games, right? Stay healthy for that grueling NFL season at running back and be as productive per touch as DeAndre Swift? I don't know if you're going to find one. I'd be very disappointed if they did not re-sign Jamal. I would be too, but I also know there's some big bidders out there, and I think that Jamal Williams has to do what's right for his own personal gain. He's what the Lions are all about. He is probably the best Detroit Lion that there is as far as the mentality and the who the Lions like to bring in. He's probably the best fit. I miss Javid Best. He's a good running back. William Agent wants big money for breaking Barry Sanders' record. We'll see if he can afford it. I mean, yeah, you can argue that. You can say like, oh, Jamal Williams broke Barry Sanders' touchdown record. He also had like 12 of those 17 touchdowns on the 1 yard line. And behind the Lions offensive line, I'm pretty sure I could rush for 5 1 yard touchdowns on that many attempts. So I'm not trying to discredit what he did. But as I said, I think the production can be replaced. I think anybody behind that offensive line can rush for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, assuming that they stay healthy. But it's more about the player. It's more about the personality. It's more about the leader than necessarily the production that he gave us. Pocket did a deal with the Browns. Pocket, I don't know who that is. Rare to see anybody evading tackles like Swift. Swift is pretty good. I know last year, I think it was against the Bears, they ran like a draw play on 3rd and 20, and DeAndre Swift just so casually turned it into a first down run. Like, that's the kind of player you're getting out of DeAndre Swift when he's healthy. And you might only get him at 100% for 3 or 4 games a season and get him at 70% the rest of the games. But those 4 games you're getting 100% out of DeAndre Swift, you're going to have a really good chance to win the game. Chark might be more valuable. I think Chark is incredibly valuable for this team. But overall, just the market not being very high, DJ Chark is super valuable in the wide receiver market because there isn't a wide receiver market. Like, Robert Woods was one of the best. Adam Thielen probably is the best now that you insert him in, but I mean, your options are pretty limited. It's Adam Thielen, who's 32, Robbie Anderson, who's just not very good anymore, Nelson Aguilar, who can't catch, DJ Chark, 32-year-old Randall Cobb, 33-year-old Marvin Jones, 34-year-old Julio Jones. Like, that's the top of the market. Like, Schuster's good. Jarvis Landry can be okay. Like, Pringle and Lazard are average, but there's no, like, wide receiver one. There's no dominant wide receiver at this point. So Chark's value is going to go really high, and it's going to be hard to match. The market value by Spot Track, as it loads here, I would guess it's probably $12 to $13 million if I had to guess. The average value for a guy like DJ Chark, I mean, 6'4", 4.3 speed. Okay, 9.5 is not bad. It's not exactly what I thought it would be. I thought it would be higher. But, I mean, it's just the wide receiver market's just not there right now. And it's hard to see. Oh, the Lions signed a center? Is that what you're saying? Let us see. Let us see what is going on. If the Lion, that's just an if. I'm not seeing anything new necessarily from a Lions signing perspective. Oh, well, you said he signed with the Browns. Who is Ethan Pocket? Am I missing something? I feel like I am. What's our cap looking like after the signing? I don't know because, I mean, if you averaged it out, it would be pretty low. It'd be like 18. but I don't know what the cap hit is for year one of the Cameron Sutton deal. I'll have to get used to saying Cameron Sutton. I'm not sure. If it's 22 left, that's pretty good. That would mean the Lions are only, I think, spending 7 or 8 on Mike Sutton in year one, which would be pretty ideal. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what the cap space looks like. I doubt it's updated on Over the Cap because I would assume not all the contract details have been leaked yet. I don't know. I think it's going to be hard to say because we don't know if the contract is front loaded or back loaded. Like, we just don't know. Brad Holmes does not give out information like that, unfortunately. But yeah, I have no idea. If I hear, I'll say something. If I figure it out, I will, of course, let every single one of you know. The cheesehead did it, says Bryce Hall. I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers is going to the Packers. I'm assuming Cameron Sutton's on this board somewhere. You have forced incompletion rate versus receiving yards allowed per target. Kyler Gordon is down here and is not very good for the Chicago Bears. There would be Cameron Sutton right up there in the lockdown territory. Just for reference, Darius Slay is down here in solid. Let's see, who else can we find? Tyreek Woolen is over here in go big or go home, as is Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, and Trevon Diggs. Jeffrey Okuda is technically in liabilities, but he's pretty close to go big or go home, which I think is more fair to what he did last year. But yeah, Cameron Sutton is up here with some of the elite cornerbacks in the NFL, such as Sauce Gardner, as a pretty high incompletion force rate. 90 minutes into free agency, Brad Holmes has filled the biggest need with the biggest signing of his tenure. Hassan Ridgeway to the Texans. I think that's a solid signing for the Texans overall. I feel like they're having a decent couple of. I feel like they've had a couple decent signings as well. Again, I think this is not the biggest signing anymore, but this was the biggest signing of the day earlier, and I think this is going under talked about. Isaiah Buggs returning was huge. I can't remember the exact number, but I think somebody put it out earlier that Buggs had like 20 pressures last year on the interior, which if that's true, that's kind of a lot. Like advanced defense and fumbles. Oh, he had 11, but that's still 11 pressures for a rotational interior guy is kind of a lot. Yes, Cam Sutton is absolutely a baller. Like I said, reminds me a lot of the Illinois prospect of Devon Witherspoon. I think actually even the same height. The Bears secure their offensive line, former guard Nate Davis to a 3-year deal. That does seem to be pretty important. We can go check PFF Nate Davis. Of course, the Bears do need offensive line help. And we're going to go look at Nate Davis. Gave up three sacks and 4 penalties in 682 offensive snaps. Not elite by any means, but not a bad. I think this is an upgrade at the guard position for the Chicago Bears, and they needed it. They needed help at the offensive line position. Do you know if we've picked up? We have not yet to this point, but there is still an option to do so. There is still very much the opportunity to do it, but as of right now, the Lions have not done so at the moment. This is the newest signing for the Bears. This is who Aleem McNeil will be absolutely destroying on the defensive side of the ball. Him and Aleem McNeil and Isaiah Buggs should have a pretty good day. I don't think Nate Davis really moves the needle for me. I think it's a solid signing, like I don't know, 5 out of 10. Like decent, it makes sense, but not necessarily the best player. Putting Justin Fields in a position to succeed. Weapons on offense traded for 2 wide receivers. talent on the offensive line. They're definitely building around Justin Fields better this season than they were last. Bears kind of disappointing in free agency. It's early. It's early. I think that the TJ Edwards deal was good. I think that was a strong deal. The DJ Moore deal to trade for him was really good. And then this, again, 3 year, I don't know how much it is. I would assume probably they might have overpaid just a little bit, but I wouldn't say disappointing. But for a team that had over $100 million to spend, you'd think that they would maybe be going out and getting like an elite prospect or an elite talent, and they really haven't. There's certainly still good players left on the board. There's still a lot of good free agents left and available. Or you have all the big ones signed, but Orlando Brown is still out there. I'm surprised they haven't tried to go after him first. I'm surprised they didn't try to go after Taylor Lewan as a tackle. They really needed tackle help. Their interior was bad, but their tackles were awful. I want the Bears to mess up in every way with all their cap room, and I'm happy Aaron Rodgers is leaving the division. I'm with you. I hope that they mess up really, really badly, actually. But as far as like the top end stars, most of them aren't signed back yet. There is, you have Orlando Brown who will get a big deal. You have Taylor Lewan, who I'm assuming will get decent money. You have Donovan Smith and Frank Clark, two older veterans that should be getting decent money. They have Tom Brady here, but Tom Brady is in fact retired. You have Yannick Ngakoue, who I'm assuming will go back to Indy or will go all the way over to Carolina. You have Jesse Bates, who's a top safety. Levante David's a big name. Graham Glasgow is somebody that a lot of Lions fans are hoping for, but honestly, I don't think we really need. The tight end market hasn't really been touched other than Josh Oliver, as you have obviously Dalton Schultz left. You have Dalvin Tomlinson left. You have Bradley Roby, Eric Kendricks, Ronald Darby. Of course, DJ Chark is a big name. I think Rodney Hudson's a pretty solid name. Jordan Poyer, the all-pro safety. You have George Fant, who's not awful. Adrian Amos is a 29-year-old free safety who's a free agent. Like, there's still some names out there. There's still some talent left, but there's been some big signings made for sure. They bricked on McGlinchey big time. I mean, it's hard to compete with a team when they're going to outbid you for 5 years, $87.5 million. Like, I know that the Bears probably wanted him, but again, it's hard to outbid a team when they're willing to give that much money. Oh, well, there you go. The Bears signed Tremaine Edmonds. That's something that I definitely did not want to see. I wonder what his contract is. I know people are going to be upset about that one when the video eventually catches up with them. Well, that one kind of stings. I know that was a big target for the Detroit Lions, or at least a lot of Lions fans wanted the Detroit Lions to target him. Cornerback PFF rankings last year. There you go. Cam Sutton, 88. You have Will Harris, 64. Mike Hughes, 77. Jeff Okuda, 70. Well, Mike Hughes, 76. Okuda, 77. And Jerry Jacobs at 93. I think Cameron Sutton was an upgrade for sure. I don't care what PFF says. The eye test, Jerry Jacobs is our best corner. That's probably true. So the Bears making some more signings. I think that puts them up to 3 at the moment with 2 linebackers and Nate Davis. The Bengals and Bears are expected to have strong investment. I know that they have a lot of money, but I feel like the Bears have got to run out like relatively soon. Because I'm assuming that Tremaine Edmonds was massive. I guess I don't know how big any of their free agents are, but I know Orlando Brown would be like 25, 26 a year, which is pretty insane. But yeah, I think that one definitely hurts. Big splash, star linebacker, Tremaine Edmonds is a Bear. And yeah, people are not happy about it. some people ain't gonna like this, and I would imagine most people here are not going to like it. Um, it doesn't give the contract details, but I'll tell you, playing Tremaine Edmonds twice a year is not going to be super fun. Bugs has signed Kaminsky, Jamal, and we're ready. That's what I'm hoping for. The Vegas Raiders are targeting Jordan Poyer. Not entirely sure how legitimate that source is, but that is certainly one to keep a look at. I feel like maybe not. Um, but yeah. So going back to linebackers, because there's been quite a few to come off the board at this point, and really, I mean, taking a look at inside linebackers, but also just some are just listed as linebackers, so I'll filter by the whole thing. Watch out for Justin Fields as he develops and has the right offense. I have never said a bad thing about Justin Fields because I think he is a very good quarterback. Um, but yeah, TJ Edwards is off the board. You have now you have Tremaine Edmonds off the board. You have Jermaine Pratt off the market. The linebacker market's going pretty quickly. Again, my top target is still Aziz Alshire, the 25-year-old linebacker from San Francisco. I think he's a really good fit for what the Lions like. Do you feel the Raiders are better off with Jimmy G? I don't see how that's going to work. I think he fits the Josh McDaniels system pretty well. Obviously, they work together in New England. It's a familiarity thing. They wanted to pay Jimmy G. Probably not many other places did. Overall, I think it's a solid signing. Like, they're better with Jimmy Garoppolo than they were with Jarrett Stidham, right? They ended the year playing and starting Jarrett Stidham last year. They're better off with Jimmy G than that. But, I mean, the Raiders, I think, are capped with Jimmy Garoppolo, whereas the 49ers had innovative play calling and they had great weapons and they had Debo and they had Kittle and they had a run game and they had all these things. Like, yeah, the Raiders have a run game, but also they don't. They have Devontae Adams and Darren Waller, but they have not nearly the line that San Francisco had. They don't have nearly the play caller that San Francisco had. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo, a little bit like Jared Goff, is a player you have to build around and you have to build for. And it's more of the roster has to pick up the quarterback than the quarterback's going to pick up the roster. And I think that's what you get with Jimmy Garoppolo. When do you think we address backup quarterback? Like I said, either a cheap young player in free agency, but like probably right before the draft, or I would even wait just until the draft. I would just go get a player in the 5th or 6th round. I would go get Aiden O'Connell. I would go get DTR if he's available on day 3. I would go get one of those young players that has the upside and has the potential to build for the future. I wouldn't spend big money on a free agent as of right now. I don't think it's worth it. To be honest, I would focus on some of the other needs first. But I think backup quarterback is going to be a need, but I think it's going to be a need saved for the draft. And it's going to be a need that is kind of the last, like, okay, we have what we need. We have our roster. We don't really need anything else at this point. Like, let's go get our backup quarterback just in case. Jimmy G is injured a lot. Who is their backup? I'm not entirely sure who their backup is because I know Jarrett Stidham just left. It might be Nathan Peterman still. I'm not sure if he's still on the roster. I'm not totally sure. I'm not entirely sure. But I do know that when Jimmy G's healthy and playing, he's a decent quarterback. He's probably a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. He's worthy of a starter position. Like, it's not a bad signing. It's a little expensive. It's a little definitely overpaying, but not a bad signing by the Vegas Raiders. I'd like to see Cooper Rush as our backup. Cooper Rush is okay. Like, he's got a lot of guts. Like, he doesn't really care what happens to the football. He'll just kind of throw it up for grabs, which works sometimes and hurts you other times. Like, I don't think he was elevating that Dallas roster. I think that they were winning because he's fine. Like, he's a decent quarterback, but I also think he'd be on the pricier end of backups. And with the Lions kind of not strapped for cap space, but definitely not rolling in it like the Chicago Bears, I don't know how much Cooper Rush is going to ask for. So, I mean, not like the worst option, but again, I think a young rookie would make more sense for this team. A 4-year, $72 million contract, $50 million guaranteed. That is what the Detroit Lions just did. Or that is what, the Chicago Bears just paid. $50 million guaranteed, 72 over 4. That is a lot of math that I don't feel like doing in my head right now, but that is, I can tell you, a big contract. In a contract that Brad Holmes would not ever pay to a linebacker, or like probably to anybody in the free agency market. What would that? 80 would be 20 a year. So that's ballpark 16 million a year maybe, which is a lot for a linebacker. I would not have paid that for Tremaine Edmunds for the Detroit Lions. I think Tremaine Edmunds is a great player. I think he would have made this linebacking core significantly better. I would not pay any linebacker $16 million a year unless they are a homegrown, proven all-pro talent. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. The Bears have the money to pull it off. Like, the Bears have the money to go get it done. But, yeah, it's an overpay. They overpaid Tremaine Edmunds, which I think you kind of had to, right? It's front loaded, which makes sense. They have a ton of money now. They want to save it for later. But that is an overpay, and that is a lot of money. I don't understand the Raiders going from Carr to Jimmy G. Seems like a lateral move at best. I don't disagree, but I think it was more of like hey, Derek Carr doesn't want to be here, and we need a quarterback. It seems like more of a desperation move. It seems like more of something that kind of had to be done more than like maybe they wanted to. Plus, familiarity with the system is probably better with Jimmy Garoppolo. I'd say maybe accuracy a little bit is better with Jimmy Garoppolo, but overall, yeah, it's not a huge quarterback upgrade. They're not going to get better from it, but they are going to probably stay right around where they were. What do you think about the Bears moves? DJ Moore, TJ Edwards, and Tremaine Edmunds. I think they have a scary linebacking duo, but I think they overpaid a lot for Tremaine Edmunds. Would you have paid him 18 a year? I wouldn't. I would not, absolutely not pay 18 million a year for Tremaine Edmunds. And later down the line, the Packers are trading Aaron Rodgers to the Jets in exchange for a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick next year. That, if that's true, that's really funny. The Lions losing. Okay, every time I read one of these, I think that Jamal Williams left. He hasn't left. He just isn't going anywhere yet. They signed another person? Oh, Nate Davis. Okay. More about Cameron Sutton. Rams fans, teams making moves in free agency. Well, let's see if anything else is happening. I think Tremaine Edmunds, good player for the Bears, bad deal. This part offseason is always fun to watch. That was not an invitation, but okay. Let's see. These QB contracts are getting out of hand. Yes, but the salary cap's also going up. So if you look at it from a percentage standpoint, it's pretty much the same as it's always been. Was Cousins traded? Not to my knowledge. I don't believe Cousins was traded. I think he's under contract. Updated post Ramsey trade 11 total. Rams 2023 draft include. Oh, I got you. I mean, they got a lot of picks. They just don't have a lot of high picks. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Cam Sutton. I think 23 would look good for him. Shy Tootle to the Carolina Panthers. This is a player that I think the Lions would be very wise to go after. Bro, that's horrific. For Edmonds, yeah, that's a lot of money. For sure. For sure, a lot of money. But my water's over there. Yeah, it's not the best move for them. Here's some more information on the Isaiah Bugs. 2 years, $4.5 million, $1 million signing bonus, 2.1 guaranteed, 8,000 per game roster bonuses in 2024, up to 75,000 in playtime incentives each year, 100,000 bonus workouts each year. Total base salary 1.1 fully guaranteed 2024. That's not bad at all. For Isaiah Bugs, that's actually really good value. I was thinking it would be roughly 2.5 a year. So getting 1.1, I know it's salary. You can obviously get bonuses and stuff after, but like that's not bad at all for a base salary every single year for 23 and 24. That is pretty good. The Panthers are having a big free agency right now. No one has been more active in free agency than I would hope so. He has the most money. No Rodgers. Oh, you're talking about the Aaron Rodgers trade? Yeah. I'm waiting for it to be like official because I don't want to be like, haha, they like really fumbled the bag when like if they're gonna get, but if they get a 3rd-round pick and a future 5th-round pick for Aaron Rodgers, that would be something else. Pay for TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, seller's remorse for Roquan Smith. I mean, if you're gonna pay $100 million to your linebacking core, I would rather it go to Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards than just solely Roquan Smith. I think that paying 2 players that money is better than paying one player that money. I don't think it's necessarily a great deal to have $100 million invested into your linebacking core, but it's better than paying one player 5 years, $100 million. I'm flying to Soldier, waiting at the doors and fighting Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, he is expensive. So Aaron Rodgers' final game in Green Bay was the 3rd straight loss to Detroit. Yep. Yes, it is. You should do a show with Micro Mike. Maybe one day. I just have a very unique schedule with school, so I don't know. It usually doesn't work out for most people. Bugs didn't want to leave, so he probably just signed and didn't really try to negotiate anything more. I mean, for what he did last year, I think that the value was pretty spot on. Like, I think, what, $6 million at the most seems like the proper thing for Isaiah Bugs for what he did. I would say Packers or poverty. If the Packers get a 3rd and a 5th round pick for Aaron Rodgers, I mean, they don't draft very well anyway with those picks, so I wouldn't be concerned in the slightest. I said today I didn't believe in Chicago Bears project. Signing 2 linebackers only furthered my belief. I would love to get to speak with Adam because I think he'd be fun to talk to, and I think he has a lot of interesting opinions. I thought the Bears started this whole process really, really good. Like, I think we all kind of figured that they would overpay for quite a few people. Like, I think we all kind of knew that they would overpay for a decent amount of players, but I thought they did good with DJ Moore. I thought they did good with TJ Edwards. You don't need an elite linebacker, like especially when your front 7 isn't very good, but you could have done worse. Somebody recommended Mariucci as backup with a lower. I'm not entirely sure who that is. We can go take a look. Um, but I mean, obviously, quarterback prospects are a hot subject in Detroit, and I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like, hey, I I would not draft a quarterback, but I wouldn't draft one until day 3, especially if Max Duggan or DTR or I like Jaron Hall as a 7th round pick. I have him graded as a 7th round pick because I don't think he's like all that good, but I would take him. I think Malik Cunningham in the 200s is good value. I think Stetson Bennett even in like the 160s. If you can get Aiden O'Connell in the 5th or 6th round, that's good value there. Like backup tight end is super important, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Did Derrick Henry sign with anybody yet? I know he's old. He is still a member of the Tennessee Titans. Again, he has to be traded. He was not released as far as I know. He does have to be traded, and to my knowledge, he has not been traded. Speaking of trades, there could potentially be a trade involving Pro Bowl left tackle Laramie Tunsil. Tunsil recently said he wants to reset the offensive tackle market. Interesting. Kind of like he did a couple years ago. But, Tunsil, again, Pro Bowl tackle. I think that if he's going to reset the market, he's going to get traded. And the Colts are probably going to, or the Texans are probably going to get a decently high pick for him. He's a good tackle. He's still young. Like, yeah, he'll be super expensive, which is going to tank your price slightly. But he's still a very good player, still a Pro Bowl caliber guy who has a lot of years left. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards are your 2 best linebackers for the Bears. Talk about, yeah, it's an upgrade, but you're also spending $100 million on your linebacking core when you don't have anybody on the defensive line. And you're probably too low to get an elite defensive lineman prospect. So I'm still not super worried about the Bears, but I think they're getting better. The 49ers are re-signing veteran safety Tayshaun Gibson to a 1-year deal. Gibson started all 17 games last season for San Francisco. Good for Tayshaun Gibson. I know the Lions aren't going to make any big deals, but I really want them to do something because I want to talk about stuff. Like, I want them to re-sign somebody. The Bears got to be reading my tweets. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, this is a super good linebacking core, but linebacker is, in my opinion at least, the least valuable position on the defensive side of the ball because it's heavily reliant on the defensive line being good in front of you. There isn't as much emphasis on the running game as there used to be. And most linebackers are not very good in pass protection. So, yeah, you have a good linebacking trio, but you don't have anybody noteworthy on the defensive line. Jaquan Brisker's good. That's really your only secondary member that's really scary. And, I mean, again, they're getting better, right? Do I think Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards and the DJ Moore make them better? Yes. Do I think that it's some massive upgrade that'll take them from like 3 wins to 9? No, I think that they're still probably a 4-win franchise at this point in time. What's up? How's it going, man, Bear Pig? I wish the NFL could go like the worldwide soccer. I know it's crazy, but it would be interesting to see. I just don't think the market's there. I don't think that they can because, I mean, all the best players are in America, and I mean, there just wouldn't be any international competition. There'd be no reason to go international. He gets 9. Who are they talking about? Oh, TJ Edwards. I see. So the Bears are this year's Browns, Jets, and Jags in free agency. That will work perfectly fine. Championship teams are built through the draft. Yeah, I saw this statistic, and I didn't fact check it, but I'm going to take it for its word. Teams that spend big in free agency, or the biggest teams that spend the biggest in free agency, do see an increase in wins. And I don't know if I can find it. I'll see if I can. Free agency spending. There was a thing. Yeah, this was it. So you go through the last however many years, right? The Giants were the most in 2016. They won 5 more games. The Jaguars, they won 7. The Bears won 7 in 2018, 7 more. The Jets won 3 more. The Dolphins won 5. Like, you win more games when you spend money in free agency. But there was also a rebuttal to this, and I don't know if it's going to show up, but it's a 1-year investment, but then most times you kind of come crashing back down, and every single one of these teams won less games the year after. Right? So the Giants had a 5-game increase, but then they went back down the year after. Right? The Jaguars got better, and then they got worse. The Bears got better, and then I think they lost 8 more games, so they actually ended up with a net loss over the 2-year period. Like, spending in free agency works if you're ready to make a push. It works if you're ready to go for a Super Bowl and you need those extra pieces. But spending big money, and apparently the Bears have roughly $25 million, which I think would be just about enough to probably sign Orlando Brown, but probably doesn't leave you very much room for your draft class. But just overall, we're just going to forget about. I've been rooting for Anzalone the whole time. I've been wanting Anzalone to be a Lion since this morning. The Lions can draft Hendon Hooker. Not a fan, but the Lions defense roster is better than the Bears. I don't disagree. The Lions defensive line absolutely 1 for 1. I don't know if any Bears defensive starter would start on the Lions. Nobody on the defensive line would. The linebacker core probably. Tremaine Edmonds, I think, would start. Probably TJ Edwards as well, but not Jack Sanborn. And then you're talking about safeties. Tracy Walker and Kirby Joseph are better than anything the Bears have. And then cornerbacks, I mean, Cam Sutton, I think, is the best cornerback in those duos. And then you probably have Jeff Okudah, who I would personally start over Jalen Johnson, I think is his name. And then you have, Jerry Jacobs, who I think would start. Kyler Gordon is just not very good. So I don't think there's, maybe the linebacker core is better, but everything that actually matters is in favor of the Detroit Lions. And the overall roster, I don't think it's a real question. Bears are annoying, like the organization or the fan base, because the Bears fans think that they're going to go win a Super Bowl, but I don't know about it. Lions win the draft, though. That has been the case for the last 2 years. Do we get a comp pick for that coach that left? We do not, because that coach did not get a promotion. And if you're talking about Deuce Staley, he didn't get a promotion. And then if you're talking about Todd Wash, he's not a minority coach, so you wouldn't get a comp pick for that either. But either way, the answer is no. Neither one of them got a promotion. But the only one that was even eligible, I believe, was Deuce Staley. But I do wonder, like, if you promote somebody within your own organization, like if we were to promote, say, Kelvin Shepard to be the defensive coordinator, like, would we get comp picks for that? Because that seems like a good way to cheat the system. I don't know. Just a random thought. I don't know where the Vikings are finding the money for this Josh Oliver contract. They might just be hoping nobody notices when they're $40 million over. Probably close to being true. Yeah, I wouldn't be scared of Chicago just yet. Replace Bobby with Edmonds. Yeah. Nate Davis played left guard ever at an NFL level. Oh, hasn't ever played left guard at an NFL level. I know he's a fan favorite, but I wonder if this move signals the lack of faith and inconsistency at right guard that ended his year with a scary neck injury. I'm cheering for Jenkins, but polls may not see him in the future picture. I mean, then I think that would be a lateral move, because I think Tevin Jenkins was the best offensive lineman on the Bears last year. So, I mean, if they're replacing Tevin Jenkins, obviously as like a player and as a person, I hope he returns and can play, but that would make it even less of an impressive move. Well, Rasul Douglas tweeted out a really sad black and white picture of him and Aaron Rodgers. Um, yeah. Let's see. The Bears offseason big board will sign Tremaine Edmonds, will sign TJ Edwards, and will sign. I mean, those are big contracts. And then I don't know what DJ Moore's making, but I know he's probably going to be up for an extension relatively soon. So the Bears are spending some big money today. They need to sign their QB on defense, Wagner or Davis. Again, the older linebackers don't really intrigue me. Like you can get a leader on defense without having to sign somebody in their 30s. Ideally, you sign somebody in their physical prime who has experience but also isn't 32. So yeah, I mean Tremaine Edmonds is kind of a monster, won't lie. Um, anything else going on right now? I probably have to get off soon because I have class at 5. So we'll go until 4:30. We'll see if anything happens. I'm sure within minutes of getting off, Jamal Williams will either be re-signed or signed away, and it will make me very sad. Chargers are expected to pursue John Johnson. I think that might be really all we get for today. No, Bobby Wagner is not playing at an all pro level. I know statistically he was okay last year. Bobby Wagner was not an all pro linebacker last year. It was pretty clear he lost a step. I would not pay Bobby Wagner $9 million when I could pay Aziz Alshire 4, or I could pay, Drew Tranquil 3. Like it, Bobby Wagner is fine, or I could pay like Bobby Okereke, I don't know, like 5 or 6. Even Eric Kendricks, who showed less drop off. Like, I don't think Bobby Wagner's bad, but I think Bobby Wagner's going to want a 2 or 3 year deal for good money. So I think your better option is like one price. Before he says Drew Tranquil, or again, my guy Aziz Alshire, who I personally think is just the best fit for the Lions for what they need, but that could just be a me thing. We have some big news reporters tweeting something out. Let's see. Um, not seeing anything. I thought they were getting something new. Tampa Bay has interest in Baker Mayfield. I did. I did watch the film, and he definitely lost a step. That's what I'm telling you. I said statistically he was incredibly good, and watching film he was fine. He was okay. Like Bobby Wagner, like statistically, I doubt you're going to see too many drop offs, but he's not. He wasn't great. Like he was okay. He had 140 tackles. He had 30 less tackles this year, and I know he's a second team All Pro, but it's because of the name. It's not because of the play. 140 tackles, 6 sacks. Like he was fine. 2 interceptions, but you could tell he was a step slower than he was in years previous. He's not getting 160, 170 tackles anymore. Like he's just, you can tell he's lost a step, and he'll probably lose another step as he continues to age more. So if it's like a 1 year deal, then maybe, but I would not put the team through another Michael Brockers of a player that used to be good, player that used to be productive, and just doesn't have the athleticism to compete anymore. Also, the price tag is probably going to be very high. Here's the reality: Bears are a 10-win football. Dude, no, they're not. The Bears are not a 10-win football team. Adding 2 linebackers and a replacement level guard does not put you from 3 to 10 wins. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. Um, yeah, that would be my reaction too. That would probably be my reaction. Well, it is 4:30. Anything Lions related? I'm not seeing anything Lions related. I'm giving it a last little scroll. If anything has shown up, I will check it, but it doesn't seem like it. The Isaiah Buggs signing was big. The Cam Sutton signing was big. Craig Reynolds is back. Other than that, though, I'll go latest just in case. I'm not seeing a whole lot. I think it's just the Cam Sutton. I think Cam Sutton is the only big move that they have right now, which is okay. I wasn't expecting the Lions to make a big franchise changing move anyway. And I don't know if franchise changing is the correct term, but definitely it getting better. Well, happens to everybody when they try to tackle DeAndre Swift. But are you coming back tonight? Probably not, but you never know. But with that being said, that is all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for showing up for this 2-hour, 15-minute stream. It was a lot of fun going over free agency. But that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.